I'm Shane Phillips, the Chief Executive Officer of the Phillips Group, and we're here at the HR Summit and Expo, and I am with an explorer and collaborator, Mr. Mark Pollock, who is also an expert in dealing with challenge and crisis. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much.
So, I understand that you are blind and then also broke your back.
Yes, and I suppose that's part of the context of why I'm here and what I'm speaking about, because very clearly I have a view of challenges that sometimes we have the luxury of choosing our challenges, and sometimes challenges choose us. And in my case, the two that chose me were blindness in 1998 and paralysis in 2010. But what I'm more interested in is what we decide to do about those challenges.
Right. So and I guess you just gave a talk on how to deal with challenge, and maybe you can provide some of your insights into this area.
I spoke about three things, whether we decide to be spectators or competitors, and the answer is to be a competitor, and I don't mean sort of win-lose competitor. I mean the competitor who defines themselves by their willingness to try, rather than the gold medal or not. And I suppose what that allows us to do is to pursue success in the knowledge that we might risk failure. So if we define ourselves by our willingness to try, then it releases us to succeed or fail. Of course, the spectators, if we choose to do that, is sitting on the sidelines criticizing it. I prefer to be in the arena. The second theme, to be an optimist or a realist, is something that I explored in intensive care after falling out a window and breaking my back. And the optimists rely on hope alone, and if you do that, you run the risk of being disappointed and demoralized if the best case scenario doesn't play out. To be a realist is the liberating place where we accept the brutal facts of our current circumstances while keeping hope alive for a better future. And I both accept I run acceptance and hope in parallel in my own situation, as I now try to find a cure for paralysis. And really the final bit that I presented is whether we decide to be soloists or collaborators, because in the world of exploration, whether it's geographical exploration or scientific exploration, there are so many world-class soloists doing things that are pretty good but not amazing. Where I think we really make the big breakthroughs is when we decide to collaborate with others in the knowledge that we don't have all the answers ourselves, that if we work together then we can make really big breakthroughs. So that's what I presented, it's what I'm passionate about, and it's all made in a context of psychological safety, where of course we have the ability to make these decisions and not have any fear of consequence.
Well, it's amazing. It's just as you're speaking here, I'm just kind of relating back to what we do, first of all, in our own lives and as consultants dealing with board and CEO. And one of the first elements that we look at when if you want to run a company successfully is be in touch with the brutal reality, the brutal facts of your business, and that's kind of the first stepping stone to being successful. And then the second one is creating that vision, which I would akin, in your case, to the hope side of creating a better reality. So it's really funny or interesting, as on a microcosm, on the individualistic level, to be successful, you're saying here are kind of three elements I find core, and on the corporation or on the macro level, I feel those are completely mirrored or echoed in terms of what we're doing as an organization.
Well, a lot of my insights have come from these things that have happened to me, the blindness and then subsequently the paralysis, or at least the blindness, then becoming an adventure athlete, then racing to the South Pole, and now becoming paralyzed and becoming, I suppose, an explorer as I try to cure paralysis, bring people together to solve these complex problems. And in recent times, I advocate for the decisions to be a competitor, to be a realist, to be a collaborator, but I operate at a personal level, at the micro level, in a context that allows me to make these decisions. I feel psychologically safe. The culture or the context in which I operate allows me to do that, and I've become more and more interested in the context and the culture that allows people to make these decisions freely, or indeed the context and the culture of organizations and teams that prevents people from making these decisions, that prevents people from driving forward as competitors, of feeling free to acknowledge the tough stuff as an anchor point, as a realist, or to give a little bit and get a little bit as a collaborator. So it's an interplay between that micro and the macro, the individual decisions and the context or culture in which we operate. So there's no easy answer, but it's an ongoing learning exercise.
And what's your advice for people who, as we take on new challenges? So for us as an organization, we're launching 2 books. It's very daunting. It's something we haven't done before. You have to have an editor, you have to have a graphic designer, you have to, have a version for Amazon, you have a version for this, and it's very overwhelming. And then you put that on top of your regular work, and whether it's me or anybody else at this conference, sometimes you wake up, you're full of fear, you're full of anxiety, you're overwhelmed, you're like, this mountain is too high, I'm never going to climb it, and you're dealing with challenges much greater. What's your advice for people who feel overwhelmed or feel that this mountain is one they just might not be able to summit?
Yeah, look, the first thing to say is sometimes mountains are too high to summit. The first thing that we've all got to do, and I'm talking to myself as much as you or the people who might be viewing this, the first thing we've got to do is say, what should we stop doing? What should we not be doing? I think that's an important thing that sometimes we miss with the to-do lists or the goals. What's the to-stop list? But I think ultimately, the reason I got out of bed after blindness and got out of bed after paralysis is that I have a deep understanding of why I do what I do. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, said, "He who has a why to live can bear with almost any how." The idea that if you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can put up with the tough stuff. And if the why is right, if writing your books and being thought leaders, if that matters to you, if it's the right thing to do, if it's hard enough, it's probably worth doing. If it's hard enough, there will probably be lots of barriers and hurdles to get over along the way. But if it's the correct why, you'll be able to put up with those hurdles. They'll start to make sense. So I think sitting over the top of all of this decision making, all of the understanding of the challenges that we face is an understanding that if you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can put up with the tough stuff. And I hear that in Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, in Simon Sinek's writings, in Adam Grant's writings, just hear it time and time again. I'm reading 2 great books at the moment. One is The Barcelona Way, by a guy called Damien Hughes, about Barcelona Football Club. And then I also read a great book recently in the same area called Legacy by James Kerr. And both of those organizations, incredibly successful and historic organizations, they have a very clear why, a just cause, a cause greater than themselves for doing what they're doing. But if it's hard, it probably means it's worth doing.
I think one of the interesting things you're touching on is that as leaders, fundamentally, is that you're caring about more than yourself, right? You're caring about your community, your society, your nation, or in the greats like you're talking about. Viktor Frankl wanted to make a global statement about his logotherapy and so on, which is on a global level. And is that really what pulls you through? Is that those individuals who are so focused on themselves, when they meet this crisis, they'll collapse because their purpose isn't larger than the crisis. Whereas when you say, okay, I want to cure paralysis, this is a global statement. Now that purpose is much larger than any crisis you're going to face. That's going to give you the strength of character to push through those dark moments.
Yeah, I think none of this is totally black and white. And I think from a leadership perspective, driven people are often very, very selfish, and often that if you look at the Olympic athletes, they have to be self-centered, they have to be selfish, they have to make sacrifices, and they have to drive forward. But invariably what we see is that nobody copes with setbacks or major challenges on their own, not even the classic solo runner. So I think you can do okay on your own. You can do okay being entirely selfish. You can get through. You might even be able to lead an organization for a period of time or lead a team for a period of time, but eventually, underperformance, infighting, a lack of motivation, a sense of disquiet or discomfort will creep in. So I think you can probably get people to go with you if you're a really forceful leader for a period of time, but people won't really be on your team for the long term. Performances won't be as good as they could be, and if you have a cause greater than yourself that everyone can get behind, that's where the collaborations start to happen. That's when leaders can come from anywhere in an organization or in a team, and that's when everything starts to happen. So selfishness is part of the game, particularly for world-class competitors, but collaboration's where the big breakthroughs happen, and that comes from a cause greater than ourselves.
Right. But even in the Olympic athlete, there's a duality there in that, yes, to become, Usain Bolt, to be the fastest man in the world, maybe there was some selfishness in how he trained, but his statement is global, and now he's redefining, he's saying, guys, ladies, this is how fast a human can actually run. It's inspiring. So there's that duality of giving to the global community at the same time, at the crux of it, having that selfish drive to develop yourself, I guess, which is interesting. I could speak with you all day. It's really fascinating, Mark, and I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your insights with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Thanks. That's Mark Pollock, who is an explorer and collaborator and a specialist in challenge crisis management. He's a speaker here at the HR Summit and Expo, the largest HR event in the Middle East. And I'm your host, Shane Phillips, the Chief Executive Officer of the Phillips Group. And it's just great to bring you guys this awesome content live from the conference floor.